Wildfires have always been a part of California, but indigenous folks knew how to deal with them. You have to make sure that you clear the brush off the ground so that if there is a fire, it doesn't spread quickly. You have to make sure that you prune the trees every now and again to make sure that if there is a fire, it doesn't catch everything on. You have to kill the dead trees. You have to pull. So they were literally taking care of the land, like plants and trees in California that need the fire. Like the fire actually activates them to grow. I will say the white man, they would say colonialists, came in and just didn't respect any of our knowledge and didn't have their own knowledge to replace it with, and decided we're going to build houses in the middle of the redwood forest, and we're not going to clean the ground, and we're not going to sweep the earth, and we're not going to pay attention, and now towns are burning down. Yes, it is climate change, but it is also a disrespect of the knowledge that existed that knew how to live in these situations.
The astounding part of the white privilege is not just what happened in the story. It's what happened as a result of watching it.
Kamau Bell is an Emmy Award-winning television host, director, and stand-up comedian who's about to embark on his latest comedy tour, Who's With Me?
I'm a man, a heterosexual, cisgender, dad man.
The system of white supremacy is still in place there.
That's what I'm getting.
That's why Donald Trump is Donald Trumping, because he knows if I do it the way the system wants me to, I can't do things like sign an executive order to dismantle the Department of Education, because that's not actually in my purview.
Right.
It's not in my powers. But because I don't respect the system, I'm dismantling the Department of Education, because I don't respect the system. So she's like, yeah, okay. So I felt like that was it. And then this Michael Lewis thing, he invited me to write an essay for the Washington Post about the government. And puts like these profiles of people working in the federal government. And so he's sort of like, it's going to be a book. I'm like, okay, it's going to be a book.
Let's do it then.
And the good thing about when you add me to your thing, I'll go out in the world and you know, in the way that other writers will not do that. So like we just did Christian on Report show this morning. So you get like a pitch man when you sign me up. So
you want to do a book with me? Because
I'm happy to get now. I will do that. I will social media it. I will videos and I'll do whatever it takes. Yeah.
Listen. That bit I found this year. So this is my baby book, and I ran a creative agency for 20 years. So coming back to literature was like a decision I knew. I was like, once the business is operating and doesn't require me every day, I'm going to go and write a book. I had no idea what book I was going to write.
Okay,
no idea. In fact, I kind of was like, I want to write a love story, right? I want to write a comedy, and this is a crazy story. This is true. I was in New York. And I was living in Brooklyn, and the business was starting to operate on its own, you know. And I sort of went into like a depression. My grandfather had died. It was snowing. My Floridian body was just really struggling with New York. My car kept getting towed. Like it wasn't good. And I'm whenever I feel that way, I watch 90s movies.
Okay.
You know, I'm all John Hughes. I'm like locked in.
Yeah.
If you see me watching like Love Jones, I'm in deep depression.
You're going.
So I'm sitting, I'm watching Ferris Bueller's Day Off. Okay. And this kid is like, you know, he's got the audacity to look right at you. He's skipped school. He's his friend who skipped school. Personates a cop and chooses great. Steal a car. Yeah, Porsche, a ridiculous Porsche. And then at a certain point, he's singing Dr. Shake in the parade, right? And I realize I'm sitting here, I'm like, I'm rooting for him. I'm rooting for him to win, rooting for all of this mischief to win out. And I'm sitting watching this movie, and I went, what happened if I took Ferris Bueller and I traded him for Trayvon Martin?
It's a shorter movie.
It's a very short movie. It's 6 minutes.
Yeah, no, it's short. It's a short. Yeah.
And I was so startled by how I knew that, and everyone around me knew that if you traded them out, we're not rooting for Trayvon's mischief in the same. Trayvon,
well, you might be rooting, but the movie is not rooting.
The movie's right. Right. And so I was like, I'm going to write that book. I want to write that book. And so the book I've written, my initial plan was to write the Black Ferris Bueller.
Oh, that's funny.
And somehow I translated him killing all the white people.
Well, eventually. It's funny because when you say that, it makes you think about the fact that like, so I'm obviously I direct documentaries when I can, and I've been a big fan of documentaries all my life, but often I'm watching documentaries about white people, and often like I watched the Alex Gibney does a lot of good ones. He did the one. I mean, I'm not saying anything new. Alex Gibney's a good director. He did the one on Scientology called Going Clear. He did the one on Elizabeth Holmes, the Theranos tech. That was he did. It was called the Allowed for Blood. She was on the
like Steve Jobs, and I was like,
Yeah.
did she go to prison? Like, oh, you did.
Yeah, she's right now. I think it's called Out for Blood. Anyway, it's about Silicon Valley and her scam. And then a movie like The Big Short, which was written by Michael Lewis, but was directed in a movie by Adam McKay. But I'm like, all these things are about white privilege, even though they don't acknowledge it. Because like Elizabeth Holmes, her whole thing was like telling people she was going to create a project that medicine had said is impossible.
Yes.
So, and she was not a doctor. And
This was like, I'm going to do it.
and so she sold it to like old white men
Yeah.
of privilege or money and said, and then you fell in love with, okay. And they just fell, and she sold it to old white men with privilege and money. And they just basically fell in love with her.
Yes.
And then they gave her millions and millions of dollars. And she was on the cover of Forbes. She was like a billionaire, the fastest self-created billionaire, self-created being a thing. And I'm like, this is about white privilege, because a black man, a black woman couldn't say, I'm selling you a magic thing that is science and technology and medicine that cannot exist, but I'm going to do it anyway.
And I've created it, so baby.
Yeah, it's over there. It's right over there. It's in this box over here. I can't show you. And when I bring you to my place to show you how it works, it's going to be a bait and switch. So you're going to go into your room, I'm going to take your blood, then I'm going to walk you away, and we're going to.
And you all know.
And you won't know. And then you come back, oh my God, it worked, even though you didn't actually see it work.
Well, I agree with you. I think definitely white privilege.
Yeah.
The astounding part of the white privilege is it is not just what happened in the story, but it's what happened as a result of watching it. There are people who almost treat her like, do you remember that movie in the 80s, Billie Jean, where like she like her brother motorcycle gets hit and she becomes like this superhero?
Yeah.
Right? It's like that. It's like that girl, like she ain't doing all that. Come on.
Yeah.
And so I will never forget, my wife had told me about that documentary, and I was like, oh my God, that's terrible. And then we're on a train, we're in New York, and about to get on the bus or the subway, and she goes, it's right there. And then I look up and I see the poster, and I was like, white Steve Jobs? Like, what is going on? Like, how can you even make a poster that looks like that?
Yeah.
Like pretty face, done up, holding this pill, like she's accomplished wonders.
Yeah.
You wouldn't know that it's a scam looking at the poster.
No.
If that isn't privilege, like the concept that even that isn't damned.
Even the thing that is about your scam makes you look like a success.
That's it.
Yeah.
It was like, and so I think the privilege goes quite deep.
Yeah, it goes into the marketing campaign, because it goes into the TV show they made about her, where they sort of made her the flawed heroine as opposed to the conniving scamster, which I think she is.
I mean, obviously she is. So that. But you were saying something about the person who directed the documentary. Sorry.
No, it's just it's just the idea. It's really just the idea that I see all the time in media, things that are about white privilege that don't claim white privilege. And it's like, that's actually what this should be a lesson about. It's not a lesson about Silicon Valley. It's not a lesson about American capitalism, only about how American capitalism connects to white privilege, which is what we're dealing with now.
Yeah.
That's the thing that goes unsaid. And I understand, because the directors are often white people, right? They don't even understand it from that angle. They see it as like, look at this individual who did this thing. They happen to be a white lady, or they happen to be a white man. Like the other one was the guy who's claimed to invent office space. WeWork.
That's, oh my gosh, he looked like Jesus.
Yeah, there's like this dude, like he basically was claiming to have invented office spaces. Like, I've invented retail office space, and you just go, could a black person get away with saying I've invented? But no, and he planted that office real estate was a tech company, and people was
astounded,
and they gave them
astounding.
He walked away from that company. He didn't go to jail. He walked away from that company with hundreds of millions of dollars. Like, that dude has still got hundreds of millions of dollars, even though it's very clear he didn't invent nothing, and he lied and he scammed. But American capitalism privileges white people, white men especially. He's also always else. That's what tall.
As a short man, I could speak to that. I could attest to it.
As a tall man, I feel very lucky that my dad's 6'6". I feel very lucky that of all the things that America doesn't like, at least I got one.
Listen, it's like when you're short, you are automatically identified as less, no matter what
I'm not
happens.
going to argue with you. I'm not going to argue.
And so I have to skip.
I know they told us we have to argue, but I'm not going to argue.
I got heels, man. Like it's outrageous.
You ain't the only ones. Well, a lot of Robert Downey Jr. wears heels.
Okay, facts. But he wears flared pants.
Yeah.
There was a moment in the 90s, but I'm out of that. I'm out of it now. Why do you think? Why do you think it's so easy to sort of give that privilege, to give that trust into someone who just looks a certain way? Why do you think we do? What do you think is about the psyche of the country that allows? Because it's not just white people; black people do it too.
No, we do it too.
Someone could walk into your room right now in a doctor's uniform and be like, "I'm gonna put this needle in you," and you'll trust them if they're white.
You have to train yourself out of trusting white faces or old white men's faces. You have to sort of go. One of my favorite stories about my daughter, I actually told her in my Netflix comedy special, is about the fact that she grew up watching a TV show called Doc McStuffins, which is about a little black doctor. Well, it's a little black doctor who's magical. And in the show, Doc is a magic doctor who fixes her toys. And then her mom in the show, who's a black woman, also is like a real doctor. And they go to her practice sometimes. And so you get the, and so what happened because of that show was my daughter went to the doctor for the first time after watching this show. And when a white man walked in the room, she was just like, what is this?
This is incorrect.
And like she had not been programmed with old white men or doctors. And so when a white man walked in, she did the thing that kids do when something's wrong. I'm sleepy. I'm
That's the move.
That's what I do. Because kids never claim to be sleepy. And so I was like, she had not been programmed the way that like I had been, that white men are doctors and that you should trust old white men.
Do you think that this is a thing that I'm debating in my own mind, but do you think representation is a solve for that?
Solve, it's a tool. Because I think the idea is that now my daughter is of the age where she understands that most of her doctors are not black women.
Yeah.
You know, you could find black women doctors, but it's not the world that she thought she thought black women are doctors. And so that representation is one thing, but then when you get out in the world and you see, oh, it's actually a very small percentage of doctors that are black women. That's not, so representation as far as like on TV, that's a tool. I work in Hollywood, or not work in Hollywood, I work in the industry, but like, so representation is a piece of it, but it's not the whole thing.
Yeah, I don't think so. I'm in a place now where I don't actually think you can just put a black face on a thing and would be representation. That there needs to be some sort of cultural, like something that I can look at and I go, I could see not just the tone of my skin in that, but I could see my way of life in that, which I think is difficult. When I was writing my book, there's a scene in the book where they have to get on an airplane. Now, I want you to imagine a reality in which there are no white people. And I did this exercise when I first had the idea for the book. I was like, okay, I'm going to go to my nearest coffee shop, which at the time, again, I'm in Crown Heights and it's like down the street from where Biggie was. And there were no black people in this coffee shop. Yeah. Right. And so I sit down and I'm like, okay, it'll just be like me and my man over here who's like black and like Puerto Rican. And then if it's just two of us, who's sourcing the materials for all of this furniture, right? Who's getting the beans? Who's paying for the stuff to be transited from wherever they're getting it from? Who's digging the oil to get the gas? Who's doing all of this? Who's got the bank accounts to be able to manage it? Who handles the bank? Yeah. And the higher I went up that funnel, I was like, yo, this isn't just put a face on it. There's this whole thing that we have no access to. And that thing begets, I believe, the trust. Because you're so familiar with it being occupied outside of your purview by something else. And so when you arrive to it, if you see that which is in your imagination, you're like, oh, this isn't that thing I was imagining, because you weren't a part of that initial imagination. So I've been in that space where I'm like, when I see a film or I see something where I go, we're represented tonally, we're represented in that there's a physical black person that occupies this space. I immediately go, I want the culture to occupy it too, because that is the thing that makes me feel something. That is the thing that makes me connect to it. And if that's happening all the way up, I think a lot of the systems will operate differently. And so if you inject culture into digging for oil, the way we dig and think about oil might be very different than how we do it now.
Well, yeah, I mean, so that makes me think of a lot of things. We'll try to just grab one. So when I had a TV show Satire called The United Shades of America.
Seen it. Very good show. Congratulations.
7 years, I traveled around the country talking to all sorts of people. And we did an episode that some of the episodes came from me, some of the episodes came from the news, being like, you have to start with this because the news is talking about it. But one that came from me was about California wildfires. Because I live in California. My family's we've never had our house burned down, but we've been in situations where the air got bad because of a fire hundreds of miles away. So we had to figure out, we can't stay here because I have asthma. My mom's 80. We have to sort of figure out, so one time we were refugees to Las Vegas because it was the cheapest place we could go.
I mean, think on a refugee.
Yeah, no, it was just like, and people thought it was like, that's Michigan, I'm rich. I'm like, the flights from Oakland to Las Vegas are like $60. They're not, that's not good. And Vegas gives away hotel rooms. It's not that complicated. So, yeah, we were like, well, I don't know if we should include the part where you, back to Las Vegas. We took Southwest. We didn't, sorry that you paid me well. I can take my family on a Southwest flight to Vegas and turn in some points to get a hotel room. Sorry, CNN. For a heated discussion. We don't want you to look successful. Okay. Which is a true discussion. So, when I say that to say that, like, I want to do an episode about California wildfires. And one of the things I learned is that, you talk to Indigenous folks, like, look, they're like, who've lived there since, as they say, time immemorial. Wildfires have always been a part of California, but Indigenous folks knew how to deal with them.
Yes.
You have to make sure that you clear the brush off the ground so that if there is a fire, it doesn't spread quickly. You have to make sure that you prune the trees every now and again to make sure that if there is a fire, it doesn't catch everything on. You have to kill the dead trees. You have to pull. So they were literally taking care of the land because they're like, we're not going to beat fire. We're not going to.
That's not why we're here.
Yeah. Also, we need there are literally species of like plants and trees in California that need the fire. Like the fire actually activates them to grow. So it's like, we not want the fire. The problem is that, I will say the white man, they would say colonialists came in and just didn't respect any of our knowledge and didn't have their own knowledge to replace it with and decided we're going to build houses in the middle of the redwood forest and we're not going to clean the ground and we're not going to sweep the earth and we're not going to pay attention. And now towns are burning down. For, again, as you say, it's not that this, and there's sort of the sense of like, it is climate change, but there's also a disrespect of the knowledge that existed that knew how to live in these situations.
I think that's paramount because I don't think that, I think there's a whole science to the way people lived that is disregarded now as being pseudoscience, when obviously it operated just fine without you. And that, when I think of colonization, the book I'm working on now, which is a bit of a hot take, it sort of tries to take the concept of demonic possession and associate it with the idea of colonization. Just to say, colonization will extract everything about who you are and fill it with what they want you to be. Right. And now you have to, if you're going to exist in the system in which we have to live and have to operate, you have to slowly shed these things that might have been important to you, going all the way back to things like knowledge of how to deal with these fires. Now you don't know. And over time, you can't possibly teach that to someone else because it's no longer about who you are. And that to me is the same thing as something possessing. I mean, quite literally, enslavement was possession, but that possession continues. And so then the question comes is, how do you exercise that? And is exorcism in that, is it even a thing that can happen in the state that we're in?
I mean, so right now we're in the middle of America being possessed.
That's it. The whole country.
We're in the middle of demonic possession. I would say that's a great way to put it. There's so many ways you can put it. One of the things I learned over the course of United Shades, and a lot of lefty folks who are watching this are going to be like, yeah, of course, is that American capitalism is the enemy of most situations in America. Like, so like that's the evil force. Well, and a lot of my social friends like, oh, just a few now for you. Sorry, I was just not studying all these texts directly. I was doing stand up comedy. And so all that means is that, if you're, any sort of like, and I'm just sort of using my knowledge from The Exorcist, but like to get out a demon, you have to do dramatic things.
Yes.
The Exorcist doesn't end with like, just take this echinacea pill, so there has to be a dramatic reset, like some sort of like big thing that happens to get rid of the demon. And I think Americans have to find out, do you have the appetite?
Oh my God.
Reset? Because otherwise, the demon's going nowhere.
Nowhere. Go back and watch America. Please go back and watch Exorcist and watch what they went through.
Yeah, no, there's not a patch that she puts on. There's not a like get a good night's sleep and you'll be fine. There's not yoga, it doesn't cure it. It's not a Pilates. It's not a matcha. It's not a matcha latte. It's not an app that you download. If you download the prayer app,
it's going to get you out of there. But I remember watching. I quite like horror movies just in general.
See, I'm the opposite.
See The Exorcist?
Yes, I mean, because I had a white friend who liked horror movies, so there was a period where I had to watch all of them. But I am actively not a fan of horror movies, which is funny because Jordan Peele's whole career is about black horror movies, and I watched Get Out, and I was like, that's great. I'm going to support the rest of you today. I'm not coming back for any more of your horror movies.
It wasn't even scary. It was good though. It was
which one?
Get Out.
And your partner's white?
My partner is biracial. I remarried, so I was married, and I have 2 children that are biracial, and then my current wife is biracial.
So for me, Get Out, this can be our disagreement moment. I saw the trailer. I was like, that looks amazing. I don't need to see it. I lived through it with my wife and my in-laws. I've lived through this. I don't need to see. I don't want to go back. It looks amazing. It looks amazing. So then I saw it, and it is great. And then the end of it is like a classic horror movie with, so it's like all slasher, it was fine. It's great. And then my wife Melissa was like, who doesn't like horror movies? She's like, should I see it? I was like, no. First of all, you don't like horror movies. Second of all, it would be way too triggering.
You're gonna upset.
Yeah, no, it's too on the nose for us. A little bit feels like we should sue him, but like, hey man, it's my personal business. Because I've been around these white people in my wife's family, not like just because extended family, because it's not always the in-laws and the few in-laws that you have the issue with. It's the cousins and the uncle, the extended family. We end up in conversations about voting for Obama the 3rd time, or worse, because that's not the worst. The worst is like, y'all are just going to talk about Obama like that, and I'm right here.
That's it.
Like you don't like him, and you just feel free to just yammer da. Why don't you guys Google me before you finish the conversation? Because I'm a joke
in that situation.
So for me, like horror, like I think for me, and I get a lot of black horror movies, but for me, I'm like, I feel like I'm already in a horror movie called The United States of America.
That's a fact. I mean, there's no question that
every day I feel like I've seen the horror movie where you're walking down the hallway like, hello. Hello.
This is why when black people see something scary, they're not waiting around. They're not wandering down the hall with the flashlight now because they already know what that feels like.
Yeah. So you like horror movies?
I do love and Get Out. When I watched Get Out, I had a bunch of different reactions to how well he organized the narrative, reactions to how well he filmed it, like to bring in these really traditional horror movie tropes and camera styles was just fantastic. Mm-hmm. That one scene where Lakeith, when he turns around, he's got that face. I was like, I've been there. I know this. I do know this.
Yeah.
That for me was like none of the slashery stuff. That was legit scary.
Yeah.
And then there's a lot of sentiment around getting into the sunken place.
Yeah.
I was like, yeah.
That is because he has given black culture like ways to talk about things, a common language.
That's it.
And common references. Like for me though, even though whatever I think about the movie, again, it's great. I'm just not a horror movie fan. The scene where the woman's no. I use that meme part 4 times a week.
Every response to every email.
Yeah.
Her responder.
Yeah.
Do you think that that black people now are in the sunken place? Do you think of them in that there's part of our culture, there are several people?
I think it's funny. I think the thing that makes me most frustrated, not most, I don't think first of all, I don't think black people are in the sunken place. I think that, we talked about this before. Black people as a whole, we're not a monolith. And it's funny we talk about, I used to say that on United Shades, and then I heard people say, stop. Black people we get very quickly tired of the thing once it becomes text.
Yeah.
So like, it's fine when it's not, when we're sort of like, oh, that's a good expression. But when it becomes something that white people feel comfortable to say,
yes,
we say like, whoa, we haven't said whoa for over 10 years as a serious thing. Yes. Probably around Ferguson, it was at its high, and then it's sort of like, we said, okay, we're done with that. Black people not a monolith became such a shorthand cut of saying we're all different that I think it became too sort of like ubiquitous. So we are not a monolith, but also that expression is not complicated enough. Yeah. Because we still, as we talk, I'm gonna quote you from earlier. We still need to move as a unit occasionally. Yes. As much as we can.
We need to be thinking monolithically. We need to be able to at least orient ourselves to the parameters of who we are.
Yes.
Similar value systems and all of that. I guess I ask about the relationship to the sunken place, because I do think that there's these sort of automatic responses that black people will have to certain things that don't go any deeper, and they don't resonate to a place that feels like a common language. It's like they just like you might see Karen walk in and this immediate anger versus like maybe the way we're operating this business, or we're thinking about this business, isn't an invitation for people like a Karen. And I see people like Candace Owens. Well, I don't have any. I don't love or hate Kings. She has the thoughts that she has.
You have no opinion about Candace Owens?
I mean, I have opinions about like I think she's putting on a show. Personally,
Is it a good show?
it's a terrible fucking show.
Okay, I was just saying, it's not like I hadn't heard a black person go. I had no love or hate. I mean, I just think you don't. I just think you only try to put her on your.
No, her opinions are a different thing. But when I see her on my screen, I don't. My reaction isn't I want to battle Candace Owens.
Yeah.
My reaction is me move that out of my purview.
I want to battle the ideas. I don't want to battle Candace Owens. Yeah.
And I don't know if that's like maybe I'm numb to like the two constantly be in a state of confrontation. And so is that a sunken place is my question.
So I think that I think one of the problems that we have as a society, but specifically black people, is that I can open up my phone right now and open up like my Instagram app or my Threads app, and I can see different versions of black people having the same conversation from different angles. And if I follow this one, I'm like, we're in a sunken place. And if I follow this one, I'm like, oh, we're about to break. We're in the midst of overcoming. And those are happening I think it's because my algorithm is sort of schizophrenic because I just sort of look at lots of things, which I am great about. But so it means that I can turn on, this is a great example of a recent thing. On my algorithm, there are people who are like Jasmine Crockett, Congresswoman from Texas. She's sort of like having she's sort of like what Cori Bush used to do, sort of like she's the one who speaks, black woman who's out in the world, speaking very directly, feet to power, indicting the MAGA Republicans at every turn. It has a little bit of swag or a lot of swag. So she's able to do it in a way that feels like that pops. It goes viral. So she recently called, because she's from Texas, she called the governor of Texas, who's Governor Hot Wheels. And he's in a wheelchair. So that's a very stark image of Governor Hot Wheels. And they'll be clear, Governor of Texas is not good to disabled people at all. His policies are anti-disabled. So he is basically the person with a disability who's anti the disabled community, doesn't do it. So he was disabled, apparently a tree fell over. So you would think he would have gone through some learning, but he's also a white man from his privilege and wealth, so he doesn't have to learn. Learning is not required to be the governor of Texas. So she calls him Governor Hot Wheels, and there's these two discussions that are on my algorithm. One, yeah, Jasmine, go get him. That's right, Governor Hot Wheels. Yeah, black people. These are direct quotes, of course. Then there's discussion of people who are like, I'm black. I'm either part of the disability community or I am an ally or a friend of the disability community. We shouldn't be really insulting disabled. We shouldn't be using people's abilities or their disabilities to insult it. We can insult him in a lot of different ways. We can call him all sorts of, we can call him outside of his name. We can call him everything but a child of God, but don't use disability as a way to insult him. Yeah. So these are two different conversations by two groups of people who allegedly have the same goal. So these black people don't like him and will use any tactic they can think of to make him feel bad. But so we'll talk about his mama. We'll talk about his limp, talk about his whatever, talk about his mama's limp, whatever. I will talk about whatever I need to talk about if I think it's going to make you feel bad or if I think it's funny enough.
Where do you land on those? Where do you land?
So here's the funny. So I'm a stand-up comedian. I originally trade. Okay. So I do have this sort of like, if it's funny enough, but so I do. But also, if your job's not to be funny, then funny enough isn't really the method. Right. So like as a comedian, you're literally supposed to get away with things that people are supposed to get away with at their office, at their meeting at the office. Yes. But unfortunately, we're starting to blur all these lines, and now politicians know I can't go viral unless I sort of do some things that are going to appeal on social media. And so it's great. So Jasmine Crockett is playing this sort of like dangerous game of like, and she called Marjorie Taylor Greene, like, she was like a bleach blonde, blah, blah, blah. But one thing she said was butch body.
I remember that.
And then some of the members of the butch women community are like, hey,
our bodies are.
That's not an insult. These are what we want. We want our bodies to be butch. And so again, like that's not bleach blonde, maybe, but not butch body, And so, and I had to talk with someone else. I was like, look, I get that. I think Jasmine Crockett is like, I'm going to say the thing. Marjorie Taylor Greene probably does not want to think of herself as having a butch body. Yes. Therefore, if I say anything, it's going to hurt her feelings. But in the end, but there's also collateral damage.
Yes.
So that's all I have to say. So as a comedian who's also has a history of activism and likes hanging out with activists and came up with like stand-up comedians and ethics studies majors in equal measure, like in my soul circle.
Which is hilarious, by the way.
Yeah, I'm sure. I was like the smart comedian and the dumb guy with the ethics studies stage. So I think that like, I don't know that Jasmine, if she keeps playing that game, I don't know that it's going to give her the life in politics that she ends up wanting. You may go viral for a few moments, but you might not be able to ascend to the next level.
Yeah.
Because there's already too much tape on you.
I see that.
It's like, you can say all this stuff, but I don't know that there's a long-term.
It's the slavery meme. It's the equivalent of
Yeah.
You dress up, that's it. It's like, no, this is going to be who you are.
This is going to be your, and I would say this, like, so I just would, if I was in her corner, I'd be like, are you really thinking this through? And if you are, go for it. And maybe I'm wrong, but you're sort of like, what you're now doing is like dividing people who should all be in your base.
Yeah.
Because like the black people who are allies with the disabled community or black people who are disabled, they love when you indict the right. And they want to ride for you.
But like not at the cost.
Not at the cost of their own dignity or the dignity of their friends. And so I think that like, for me, there's a thing that like I as a comedian years ago went to this thing like for example, this is a small thing. I don't generally say the word bitch on stage. Only because a friend of mine pointed out that like you don't say it that often. So when you say it, it's super loud. Like you're not a guy who's like, there's a way in which certain comedians, bitch, nigga, da, 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 and it's sort of all even way that like, so when you say it, it feels like, ooh, you just,
He just sawed us up in our seats.
Yeah. That's not, doesn't sound like it. And so and I was like, and I realized I had a joke that had that punchline. And I was like, at first I pushed back, but I was like, you're not wrong. I'm not a comic I'm not like, nobody's gonna call me foul mouth. Now I'll swear and say the F word and I'll say the N word if I need to. But that word specifically, I feel like there is enough of a thing around it that like, I don't need it. And also a lot of times it's like, the challenge is, can you write a joke that's funny without that? So that becomes the challenge. So for me, it's like, I have now gotten to the point of like, if I'm going to insult you, I'm going to try to make sure I don't step on the toes of anybody who doesn't need to be insulted. That's what I'm trying to do. So like,
which I think is honorable. That's like an honorable path. Even in the midst of being comedic and likely at the expense of someone, you're still trying to navigate
like
honorable bad.
Yeah, I have a Substack, and I just wrote a Substack where I was like, I'm going to try to think as many insults for Steve Bannon as I can.
There you go.
So I want to hurt his feelings. Time to hook guns. But I'm going to see if I can be creative about it. And feel like I can stand behind all of them. And without feeling like, oh yeah, I shouldn't have called. And down to like, and now I just think people are going to think this is annoying, this is stupid. But like this morning, I was like, I was going to use the word numbskull. I'm like, where did that come from?
Where did that come?
I was in the middle of Googling it before. I don't know. But I just sort of like, that's the way my brain works now. Like, I'm like, hey, is that a thing? Because, a lot of these things started out as medical terms for ways to describe people who had mental difficulties.
And so you do. Well, I generally think that Black folks are a little bit too unserious, or not, or maybe that the space for seriousness and the space for unseriousness occupy the same room too often.
That's the problem, is that the barbershop conversation is fine.
Yeah.
We sort of messed up when we started to try to monetize the barbershop conversation.
Listen, now you're preaching, because the idea, this is what I meant when I said you invite someone into the business. It's the invitation, that whole like concept of like, I'm going to invite you to the
cookout.
Yeah. Just take it easy.
No, I see a lot of people like, stop inviting people. First of all, we're making too much out of this, but stop inviting people to the cookout.
Yes.
Just stop. The idea that like a white person does one nice thing and now they're invited to the cookout. Just stop. Just stay. And the fact is, like, I feel as a Black person does the work I do, I don't know that I'm always invited to the cookout.
Facts. Like, I feel that way.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm a vegetarian.
Yeah.
I'm not coming anyway. Right? I know you put ham hocks in the grease.
Exactly.
No, but they're not. When you want to eat the ham hocks, they're just 10 degrees.
Yeah.
It's chicken. It's not meat. It's chicken.
Turkey.
Yeah. Turkey.
Right. Yeah.
So I've been on that take of like that sort of, I'm going to say the word protection, but protection maybe it's too strong a term, protecting these spaces where you can be unserious versus letting them just be a place that now identifies you as unserious. Mm-hmm. And so like meme culture drives me a little bit crazy, because I'm like, okay, it's like some of the stuff is hilarious, but I don't think you need to be sharing it with everybody.
Yeah. It's like, I really think people have to understand that there's a reason there's a group chat. I mean, right now we sit there. The group chat. People don't understand. Like you have to be very careful who you invite to the group chat, which is what apparently people in Trump's administration don't understand. They should invite everybody to the group chat. Yeah,
I'm trying to get in.
No, you might just get a random text. Oh, I know when we're bombing. Yeah. So, but there's a reason why you have a closed group chat because they're like my friend Dwayne, who you just met. There's a group chat with me, him, and another dude named Andre, and we were in there like having barbershop conversation. But nobody's ever said, man, I just showed what you said, Dwayne, to the newspaper, and they were upset. Like,
no one's going to do that.
You already had formed that bond before the group chat starts. So I do agree that like by letting, like there was this idea, like I was in a doc about Black Twitter. Black Twitter is not a real thing because it's on Twitter and it's accessible to everybody. Doesn't mean I don't engage. Doesn't mean I didn't enjoy my time on Black Twitter. But I think like you'd hear white people go, how do I download Black Twitter? And so it's like, and that tells you the issue is like, it's not really, it's a thing that only exists. And then you see all these Black social media apps that are sort of trying to be like, we're the Blacks. We're going to be what Black Twitter was for Black people. And it's a separate app. And Black people are like, I don't really want to go to a separate place. Yeah. I want to be where everybody is, but also have my own Black conversation. And it's like, yes,
tricky. It's tricky. And I don't think there's enough instances of creation of those spaces. See, that's like intentionally. And I know there's been a conversation that's been happening as of late about segregation. I think Trevor Noah had a whole conversation. And he was like, basically, it's like, I think we should be it or something along those lines. I haven't, it's just an idol. And that has been proposed to me a few times in conversation. Like, what do I think?
As far as like, we should segregate or we don't?
Like the idea that segregation can be a positive.
Oh, for sure. I mean, so I was working on a project that it still may happen, but about the integration of the Boston public schools. And one of the things I came away with from reading about it and doing the research was like, and this is funny, as a Black man married to a white woman, and so this may come off, but like, it's funny, but it's just the way. Should integration have been the goal? Because when you talk about like, and Black people of a certain age, let's say Black people over the age of 60 at this one probably, can remember a time where their Black neighborhood had its own Black downtown with its own Black businesses, where you went to the shoe shop that was owned by this Black person, and you went to the grocery store that was the neighborhood grocery store that was not a chain, and everything they needed was in their neighborhood, like when my mom grew up. So you didn't have to go to the white area town. So you didn't have to go to the white businesses because it was all in your neighborhood. And that meant that you got to see Black people who were business owners, Black people who were thriving. The problem is that the school is funded by property taxes, and because of redlining, the Black property is not worth as much, even if it's basically the same as the white property. So the schools aren't funded that well. And so then they say, we're going to send you to the white schools, and you go to the white schools and find out this is what happened in Boston. They end up sending Black kids in the worst neighborhoods to the worst white schools in the worst white neighborhoods. And so not only is this school maybe worse than your school, you're also getting your ass kicked every day. Jeez. So it's like, can I just go back to my own school? At least those teachers liked me. Yeah. You know what I mean? At least I could walk home every day instead of getting on a bus. And so for me, the question becomes, integration was the goal because they assumed that with integration came equity or came equality. And that's not what happened.
Do you think that that's that the idea of focusing on the development of sort of the centralization of Black communities is a thing that we should be moving towards now?
Yeah. So like I said, I did a lot. There's a school in Boston. Again, I know a lot about this Boston thing, but I haven't been to the school yet, but I want to go. There's a school it is a private school for Black boys, where the Black boys go to school for free. So it is functioning as a private school, but it's all done through fundraising and donations. So these kids don't have to pay to the school. And I absolutely think there is a reason that that you may want your Black boy to go to a school with just Black boys. Yeah. I absolutely 100%. And I also believe in non-binary trans. So I'm not saying that but I get you may have a Black boy, and I've seen my kids, I have all girls, and I've seen how Black boys at their school are treated differently because they're Black boys. And I was also a Black boy who went to private schools and public schools, and we go to was at a Catholic school, and my teacher was like, and there's 2 Black kids in the class in my Catholic school in Mobile, Alabama, same class. Teacher goes, Kamau, you're always standing up, walking around. I always see you walking around. Sit down. And I go, but he's standing, I pointed a bunch of white kids. That teacher grabbed me. Like, the only time we were grabbed was and I was just like suddenly shocked. Like I was like suddenly like in physical danger from this teacher because I was pointing out the obvious.
That's crazy.
So I totally get why, as a black parent of a black boy, being in places that black boys are politically in this country, that you'd be like, I want to send my kid to all school with black boys because they're going to treat him as an individual and also prepare him for the fact that the world is not just this school.
And frankly, while we're talking about centralized in America, if he ever leaves this country, we'll feel similar things no matter where he goes.
Yeah.
And you need to carry that with him.
That Black History Month is going to mean something different at a school with black boys than it means at a school, in an integrated school.
I mean, I have this affinity for the 60s, music, the political stance that just
Not an affinity for the Negro.
just in general.
Yeah.
And I always refer to it as a tool to kind of get me through the times where I'm like, well, it's bad now, but back then they killed everybody. Like they were just killing everybody. So it's not that bad. And yeah, it was quite
We're starting to disappear people at a level that is problematic.
problematic is definitely an understatement.
Yeah. No, it's just, yeah.
But the idea that you could, at that time, you had spaces that were dedicated for the advancement of people. You had the ability to speak in very serious ways while retaining your unseriousness in other capacities, which I thought was important. You didn't never see Malcolm X making jokes on TV, but he definitely made jokes.
Yeah, at the temple.
Right.
Yeah.
And so that to me, I was always
mosque.
quite fascinated by that, by the way that they were able to build, even in the context of great oppression, even in the context of murderous intent, these spaces for each other to be able to actualize, to communicate, to exchange language so that you can carry it to other places. And I have not seen anything like that since. Have you?
Seen anything like
that level of nationwide sort of collective understanding of where we are and where we're trying to go?
Yeah. You know why? They murdered all those people. I'm laughing. That you created the point was to create a vacuum of black leadership, and they accomplished their goal because it's like the black leaders don't retire.
That's it. The arc would have been like this in 67. It just went like that.
Like what is this? 2025. MLK would be. I'm trying to think. He'd be 96 years old.
I can't imagine.
That's not the oldest black person in the history of humanity.
Can you imagine all the things he would accomplish in that time?
And also just all the ways in which he would have passed the leadership baton down to other people.
Indeed.
And it would have explained how to be in a way that whatever Jesse Jackson was, he would have been more ready to be Jesse Jackson if MLK was still alive.
Indeed.
And whatever any of these people, whatever, we sort of go through these, and I always think about that clip and I play it because I'm like, he's talking about me. And I want to be aware of it. Like that Malcolm X clip where he's like, they talk about Negro leaders and they show us comedians and musicians. And I'm just like, hey, man, I'm doing the best I can, man. But I get it. I'm getting
documentaries.
I get, that's why I try to remember my job is to point at the people I think are the leaders, not to sort of think that I am the lead. But I get, he's doing it. I think he's making a good point that I think about I saw a clip recently of we think about,
I don't know if
whatever it is. You can certainly be at first you become the leader, even if that was not your path, because that's Malcolm X. MLK was basically raised to be MLK from birth. He was raised to be Malcolm X was a dude who, what am I a leader? So there's many paths towards leadership. But when you become a leader, it was very clear Malcolm X took it seriously. And I think now we are in a position where there are certain black voices who are told they're leaders, and they don't take it that seriously. That's not, or they don't reject the title of leader. You should just be like, no. I just host a morning radio show.
Yeah, they're sitting on it quite softly, and they just.
Yeah.
I mean,
I'm just the host of a morning gossip radio show. I'm not actually in a position of leadership.
I'm not guiding anyone to.
I'm just not. I may have people on here who are guiding you to the future, but I'm not actually the guy. And I'm just really good at yammering.
That's a shame.
And I've met a lot of famous people, so I can get a lot of guests on this thing. I'm not actually a leader, but I think people want to be.
Let me ask you this. I'll pose this question to you. In the event, you asked, something dramatic happened in the country. And you had to find a Black kid to get behind. One is anybody that's currently walking that you're like, I trust that this person has a vision for the future that both includes me and it would step us towards a better reality.
Put it this way. I have several people. They're all Black women. Talk about it. It would be like, I would trust a council and it just have to be the things I want to think of. The Black women who I know who are doing the work are always thinking about it intersectionally,
Yes,
in a way that the rest of people, everybody else is sort of having to do sort of like consciously.
that's my fundamental belief. We're not going to argue this point.
But like, so not that I don't think there are Black men who couldn't do it, but I just don't think I think it is just, we've never turned it over fully to Black women. And I would be happy to turn it over.
I think there are two things. One, I've always been of the belief that the country needs a matriarch. Like my family and all the families that I grew up with, even if the matriarch wasn't the breadwinner, that's who we all gathered around. You mean, right?
And yeah. What about the money? That's the American capitalism that you think that if you make the money, that you're most important.
No,
Isn't no section, but person who figures out what do we do with this and how do we split up these resources? That's not always the person who makes the money.
correct.
Yeah.
It's the person who takes the whole line of you and helps you move forward. And so I agree with you. I mean, in the book I just wrote, when they reach the utopia or mobile, it's the queen.
I can't read this book.
You gotta read. I'm telling you, you're gonna be like, oh, they really are on Dover Street.
Yeah.
But
Have you been to Mobile?
of course,
Okay, let's talk. You said you've been raised. That's right.
that's right. He says, but the whole thing is a council of women.
Yeah.
And the queen runs it, and even the king, when he's confronted by someone, he goes, "Have you ever played chess? The strongest thing on the board is the queen. It's not the king.
Yeah.
Go talk to her." And it's all about operating like you've gathered around the matriarch.
So for me, when I think about this Black council, the person who's at the head of the table is Professor Kimberly Crenshaw.
All right.
Who's literally the one of the scholar who sort of came up with, who sort of concretized the idea of intersectionality, legal scholar. She also was one of the people who was there in the room when they were saying critical race theory and as a legal practice, not as a boogeyman that is turned into. But she is somebody who thinks intersectionally easily about all this stuff. Like for example, there was the religious figure who sort of like spoke to Trump during after the inauguration. It was like basically saying you can't be so like you have to lead through more kindness. And
Yeah.
and I ran to her, Professor Crenshaw, and she was like, all that everybody was celebrating this person unashamedly. And she was like, all that she said, she never talked about racism, or she sort of pointed out the things that she didn't say. I was like, you're making a good point. So like, and I think that she would, if I put her, if she just was in charge of the whole country, she would then assemble the people. If she wanted some dudes, she can get some dudes. But like, I would put her in the driver's seat. Yeah.
I love that. I mean, I like I said, I completely agree. I did not know who she was until you just said that name.
Really? Well, first of all, high five to you for, I'm big of admitting not knowing things. So Professor Kimberly Crenshaw, she is the person who was like, did critical race studies with Derek Bell, and was the person who's credited with coming up with the concept of intersectionality as a legal term of like Black women in the law are experiencing things as Black women, not because they're Black and because they're a woman, but because they're collectively a Black. Black woman means different than something that is as a collective, just them just being a Black and a woman.
There was a paper written, I want to say it was in the maybe like 60s or 70s, called the Combahee River.
Oh yeah, yeah.
You know what I'm talking about? And it was basically that. It was like the experience of being Black and the experience of being woman. Each of those things are distinct and you need to have position. And it suggested that the elevation of that position elevates everything.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, for sure. But I think that that if what's good for Black women is good for America.
Can we put that on a slogan?
We can't. I mean, we think we just did. I think we just, fine with me. That's t-shirts, these slogans. Yeah, so I think that that until this country sort of understands that, it's not where, we are, I think it's certainly made complicated. Like, I also was like, when Kamala Harris was running for president, there's my lefty chats about normie Democrat, not significantly better on Palestine than the Republicans are. And then there's my black women who are like, we have to rally.
Yeah.
We have
No matter what. Biden needs to know. And I be honest with you, I sort of lived on both sides of that one because I was like,
Yeah.
I listen. Yeah. I want it.
Yes.
I'm going to eat these greens, even though they got ham in it. I'm gonna eat greens, but I'm
only doing it one time.
Right.
I'm only doing it on this one Tuesday in November, and then we got to talk about getting the ham outside of my greens. No, for sure. I was in a position where I live in the Bay Area. Kamala Harris is from Berkeley and Oakland. I live in Oakland. I used to live in Berkeley, and people. I got a lot of heat on this, but like Kamala Harris, like the people were going to vote for her out there, but they weren't fans. You know what I mean? It's just like, yeah, hometown girl, whatever. But like, you can't come here and talk to us about this without saying free Palestine. Yeah. Like, because this is what the Bay Area. We can't
say that.
Yeah.
If you can't speak it.
If you can't say that here, don't come here looking for money.
And you feel like someone like Kimberly,
Professor Kimberly Crenshaw, yeah.
Professor Kimberly Crenshaw, that she, based on what you know of her and her work.
Yeah, I've done events with her and just, basically how I've seen her stand up over and over again and not getting the credit she's deserved. Like people are just taking intersectionality and turning it to like a fun catchphrase without sort of know where it came from. Yeah. You couldn't, white women, I'm intersectional, like you're just saying stuff. So I think
it's macho.
Yeah, it's macho. And so I think, she's someone who is every day doing that work and assembling people and talking about these issues were very, from an academic / activist way that most people are not. And like, it was always ahead of these issues, Now, I'm not, and here's there. Again, it should be a council, but I trust her to put the council together.
Yes. I mean, I think that's the first part of it is like, one person can't possibly occupy all the spaces that are necessary, but they can find the people who should.
Yeah.
And make sure their voices are heard.
Like right now in Oakland, our mayor was recalled for a variety of reasons. Just a variety.
Is that true that happens? I didn't
realize. Oh yeah, it was recalled. Yeah.
Jesus.
It's a mess. But I love Oakland. But Barbara Lee is running for mayor of Oakland. And Barbara Lee used to be the senator from the 510 area code who like tried to run she's the congresswoman for the 510 area code for many years and then ran for senator, but white male supremacy would not let her get, even though Barbara Lee has been on the front. She's no person. Barbara Lee can also run maybe Barbara Lee and Kimberly Crenshaw. So she's pre-Palestine, intersectionality, all the things. Mm-hmm. She thinks minimum wage should be $50. And I'm like, wait, I'm an employee. I never get to call and yell at Barbara Lee. She was my congresswoman because she was always on the right side of things. You need to. But no, so she ran for mayor of Oakland. And the reason I think she should be the mayor of Oakland is that she knows she's got the right politics, but she also knows that it's not a stepping stone to the next thing. Barbara Lee has done her time. She could just retire and be on the board of companies and make money. But she understands that like, I'm doing this for you. I'm not doing this for me. And I think so much of politics is people doing it for themselves.
Do you think at the scale that she's doing here, she's done it regionally in the area that she's in, meaning she has a deep knowledge of that specific area. She's on people that translates to the larger scale of the country. I've struggled with this,
I mean, so how do you mean translates?
Meaning, could someone who operates Oakland and the area of Oakland, if you were to put them in the seat of making decisions countrywide, knowing that everyone has different needs and demands and wants and that the ideals translate.
Now, is this before the revolution or after the revolution?
For the sake of this conversation, we'll call it, let's talk before.
Because before the revolution, I think you could take the DNA of Harriet Tubman and clone her and put her in the White House. Okay. But there are so many, the system of white supremacy is still in place there.
That's what I'm getting at.
So there's just, that's why Donald Trump is Donald Trumping, because he knows if I do it the way the system wants me to, I can't do things like sign an executive order to dismantle the Department of Education, because that's not actually in my purview. Right. It's not in my powers. But because I don't respect the system, I'm dismantling the Department of Education because I don't respect the system. We just went through this whole Signal thing. Where like all these Trump administration officials are on an app that you can download from the Apple Store, sharing information, and somehow they invited a journalist into it who doesn't agree with them. Then they can't even explain how that happened. And I feel like you can't say if that had been Obama, because if you say it, you just start saying it too many times. Yeah. So I feel like we all get it 4 times a year. So I'm going to use one of my 4 times a year to be like, if that had been Obama, everybody would have been fired. Everybody would have been, probably would have
Couldn't even wear a tan suit.
couldn't wear a tan suit. They would have fired Michelle Obama's mom. You know what I mean? Everybody would have been fired. So the fact is that even if you find the best, most capable person that we think, like whether it's Professor Kimberly Crenshaw or whoever you want to put in a position, like, and now you're the president, the system of white supremacy is still in place.
And I think that's the central argument of this. Is it a requisite that it be dismantled? Now, I'm gonna preface that, or I guess I can't preface it, but I'm gonna try to preface it nevertheless. What you just said about Donald Trump, his ability to be like, I'm just gonna do it anyway, means that the system he's literally destroying the system as a way to do whatever he wants. And so to make it better, it also requires it being destroyed. But when we talk about it, we don't talk about it in the context of it's being dismantled and being created, something new being created. We talk about it in the context of trying to repair. And I think that language is dangerous, personally. As I go, we've been trying to repair the system since we got in.
Like police reform. We've been trying to, and they will tell you that we've reformed the police several times, and yet there has never been a true.
People still getting shot like everywhere, all over. And so reformation, even though to call it for police reform and not think of reformation as a significant change, not like, you can, your time off is now going to be 4 weeks instead of 2 weeks.
Yeah.
That's insane. It's insane. Do you feel like that, frankly, the systems of the country need a complete overhaul? And
yes.
And then I'm going to pose a very big ass question.
Okay.
Do you think Donald Trump is doing that?
He is overhauling it he's been making it in his name. Yes, he is. He is overhauling the system in the way he wants to see the system work. I mean, I think that nobody's going to be surprised when he says in 3 years, you know what? I'd like to not run for president again, but I think I need to stay here.
Everybody's saying it.
Everybody's saying it. I'd like, and things are we're almost there. So I probably shouldn't even run. I should probably just be president and just not. Yeah, I'll just stay being president.
We are not. I'm telling you now, the likelihood of that is astoundingly high. Even if it's 1%,
I'm surprised he says, well, if he doesn't do it, or if he doesn't figure out a way to go, you know what, I'm not going to be president, but I think that that Don Jr. is ready. So we're just going to give it. We're just going to give it Don. So
we're monarchy now. We're monarchy.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's more likely that in 10 years we look up, like I say this all the time, people go to Rome to look at what used to be.
The ruins.
I think we're more likely to be that in 10 years. Like think about Venezuela, think about all these places that used to be amazing. They used to sort of be first world countries where everybody sort of had what they needed, and then the wrong people got in charge and took it down. I think we're more likely to be that than we are to be the United States of Black women.
How do we do it? Like how do I look around and I remember being kidding. You get some bully comes in, and everyone in the class is now forced to either confront that bully or shut the hell up, and you have to decide one way or the other. But it was always at least one of us that would stand up and confront the bully in such a way that you get them back out of the room. Yeah. But right now, it doesn't feel like anyone is. People are certainly speaking up, but no one has any authority or ability to challenge that bully.
I mean, I think people are standing up. And I think we sometimes get caught up in you see a protest. What's that going to do? All of this is giving us reps to figure out how to overcome the evil. You know what I mean? So I think we take too much stock out of people showing up. Like I just saw footage. So one thing I'm trying to do is share all the times I'm seeing people stand up, because it's like, let this inspire you to stand up. Let you see other people doing it. So if you're not doing it, and I tell people, we don't all got to storm the Capitol. Some of us just got to make a casserole for our undocumented neighbor who was afraid to go to the grocery store.
I mean, if you just don't put raisins in it, it's super.
No, don't put raisins in.
Can't do that.
Raisins always belong in oatmeal and occasionally cookies.
Right.
Full stop.
And the cookies,
be careful.
Be very reticent about that. When we started this, you said, I know a way to start it. What were you going to say?
Oh, that's funny. So you're at a party. Nobody knows who you are. Nobody has any idea what you do. And somebody goes, what do you do for a living? What do you say?
I typically say I make things, and I let that be an invitation for them to ask me what kind of stuff that I make. And then at a certain point, I make it about them, because I'm in party situations. I'm personally an introvert living in an extrovert reality. And I believe in this idea of magnetism, which is, as a kid, I would go and I'll go to a party and I'll just go sit by myself. And I start drawing, I start writing, I start doing whatever I feel like doing. And it created a curiosity. And people go, what are you working on? What are you doing back here? Can I sit next to you?
Yeah.
And before you know it, I've magnetized the partner to me. And so I try to just live with that energy. It's like, I just move through the world I'm supposed to, but I'm more interested in it. And in so doing, it creates a sense of magnetism. What do you do? What do you say?
Well, my next question is, and then we can get to me. You're at a party.
Yeah, I'll do that.
I know you're, but I'm good at this. Our question too. You're at a party that you don't want to be at. You don't like people in the room. They say, "What do you do?"
I leave the party. Oh, I got time.
I got time. I just wonder. Sometimes people have an answer for like, I don't want the conversation to continue. So I just stop people.
No, I'm out.
Okay,
I'm out.
Yeah.
I don't want to be at a party to begin with. I didn't want to be at the party that I want.
You don't want to be at the party that you want the day that you were happy to talk to me. Oh yeah.
No.
Are you an introvert?
I don't. If you were to ask any of my friends, they would tell you I'm not. But I prefer to be at home. I live in England on a forest, for God's sakes. Like I'm basically a hobbit.
No,
and I'm perfectly content with that. And my wife is an actor, and she's like that. So we both.
Yeah.
I got a book. She's watching, a musical, and we're just chilling. Like sounds great. I'm not trying to engage. Sounds great.
Yeah, no, I'm an introvert, so I understand.
Just says the man on TV.
I am. I know it's funny, but I just sit there on the way to like deal with my introvert. But I'm totally an introvert, 100%.
So when you walk on stage,
Mm-hmm.
and you walk like you're doing stand up tonight.
Yeah.
Tonight, yeah.
Yeah.
Where are you doing it?
Joy Theater.
Joy Theater. So you walk out, and Joy Theater, place is packed. You sold out. And
Not tonight, but it was next time. Tonight I won't be sold out.
You walk on stage, you look around and see this, all these people that's come to see you. What's the first thing you say to them?
Just generally.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, generally, there's a moment of like, I'm letting the crowd, because people will clap, and sometimes you sort of grab the microphone too quickly, but I'm actually allowing myself to enjoy the response from the crowd of like, we're happy you're here, because the thing that I say is like, as a comedian or as a public figure, you probably in the same position, you kind of get to you kind of get to hear what people are going to say at your funeral regularly, because they're introducing you.
Yeah.
So I feel like it very much like, I used to sort of like not pay attention, but I'm like, no, it feels good that people like me in this world where a lot of people online say they don't like me.
Yeah.
So I kind of like really sit in that moment and just sort of like, there is a sense of like letting people know, however, somewhere we're all in this room together. I can hear you. And I appreciate you being here, because you could not be here. So yeah, for me, the thing about stand-up comedy is it sounds like an extrovert activity, but really it's an introvert activity because I'm doing all the talking.
God, no one's going to say anything.
Yeah, if you say something I don't like it, get that person out of here. You know what I mean? So it's really an activity you can that attracts more introverts than you would realize. Yeah,
I've always wanted to know this about comedians, just in general. And you do your show. Is it something that you've been practicing all these jokes in a row and you have it sort of memorized like a script, or are you reacting to the crowd with jokes in real time?
I mean, there's two different types of comedians. Like George Carlin had everything like her. It was a script. Apparently Seinfeld's like that too. It's a script. And then there's comedians who are like, I would say like, I've never seen Chappelle have a piece of paper. Chris Rock is also like, it's a script. I have a beginning, middle, and end. So, and then the comedians where you're like, I've never seen, So I would say that like, I'm not fully the Chappelle thing, but I am like, let's take the temperature of the room and see what's going. Here's the thing I want to do. But how you react to it is going to determine what I lean into, what I don't lean into. Like if I get a bigger laugh than I was expected, then I'm going to dig into that place for a period of time to figure out what other laughs are here that I didn't know. Yeah. So yeah, and if it doesn't get a laugh, but I feel like you didn't hear it, I'm going to try to explain it to you so I can get to the point where it gets a laugh. So yeah, for me, a friend of mine, we sort of humbly, like he compared himself to Miles Davis, where he was very scripted, and he was like, "You're more like Coltrane, where it's like I have the thing." But tonight you're going to hear my favorite things for 50 minutes. And then you're not going to recognize it because I'm just exploring. So I like to think of that. Like I'm always, especially at this point, because right now I'm working up an hour. So I'm really still in the exploring phase. And like, I'm also like, before I go on stage, what's happening right now in the city or the world that I want to talk about that. And let's just see if I have jokes about it off the top,
I think that's absolutely.
Are you coming to show that?
I have.
Okay. Thank you, everybody. Tune in tonight. You don't get all these excuses. I would love
We're supposed to be at the dinner tonight too. What are you talking about? That's it. So I'm supposed to go.
What time's the dinner?
They have the 6 p.m. like whatever, like where you get to listen to the first talks, and then 7 to 9 is the dinner. Yeah, we'll be there. So
All right.
I might skip out.
No, you won't
skip out. Oh, wow. I mean, I wore a nice shirt. You know, it's like after you go say hello.
You're here for that. I shouldn't have booked the show. Let's remember. Anyway.
Yeah, well, brother, it was my great pleasure.
Thank you. This is great.
I'm gonna find all the black women now. See if I can just wander behind them strangely.
Yes.
And see if they'll lead me somewhere.
Sweet honey in the rock for president.
Right.